before the flood, when the earth still carried memories of Eden and the wind seemed to whisper names that no one dared pronounce anymore. There was a different generation walking among men. They weren't just warriors, they weren't just leaders, they weren't just strong men, they were Nephilim, giants born from a violated boundary, children of a mixture that should never have happened, beings that left deep footprints in the ground and deep fear in the heart. It was said that they could knock down walls with their hands, that they hunted beasts without weapons, that they raised stones so large that even today many people look and ask, how was this possible? They fascinated, they dominated, and where they stepped, violence grew. But this story doesn't begin with giants. It begins with a wound. It begins with a broken family. It begins with the first bloodshed, and with a world trying to learn how to live outside the garden. Because before the Nephilim took valleys and cities, something had to happen. To understand the origin of the giants, we need to go back to the beginning. Go back to a time when the earth was young, but already marked. Eden was left behind. The place where everything was harmony became a memory. The path of life was closed, guarded by cherubim, and outside it was the hard ground, the sweat, the pain, and the awareness that choices have weight. It was in this world that the first crime happened, the first death, the first cry that never returned. Cain killed Abel. After that, silence filled the valley, and scripture says that Cain moved away from the presence of the Lord and went to live in a region called Nod, east of Eden, an exile not just geographical, but spiritual, a place where the heart can keep beating, but the soul feels cold. Still, Cain did not stop. He tried to start over. He took a relative as his wife, the narrative doesn't give her name, and had a son, Enoch. Not the same Enoch who later walked with God, but another. This was the son of the man marked by exile. Then Cain did something that seems small, but says a lot. He built a city and named the city after his son. Do you understand what this means? It's as if every stone laid down said, I was judged, but I will leave a legacy. I will mark the world. Humankind learned early to seek security, even when the heart was wounded. And over time, the lineage of Cain began to produce impressive things. The world advanced, skills emerged, tools, arts, culture. But there was a problem. When the heart is far from the Creator, even the gift becomes fuel for pride. Scripture mentions Lamech, a descendant of Cain, who took 2 wives, Ada and Zillah. And from this family nucleus came names that represented advancements for civilization. Jabal, linked to those who lived in tents and cared for flocks. Jubal, a pioneer in music working with instruments. Tubal-Cain, a blacksmith, mastering bronze and iron, shaping tools and utensils. And also Naamah, remembered for her presence and influence. Picture the scene. Flocks grow, the sounds of music cut through the nights, metals are worked, cities rise. It's easy to think, look how humanity evolved, but evolution does not mean holiness, because while hands learned to build, the heart began to lean towards vanity. The beauty that could have been gratitude became exhibition. The strength that could have been service became dominion. And what was meant to be development became a stage. And far from there, in a reality that human eyes cannot see, something was moving, as if the invisible world was watching and waiting for the right moment. There is a truth that runs through the biblical narrative like a silent thunder. Not every battle happens on the ground. Some begin in the invisible. There were beings created for the light, to serve before the Most High, but who chose to abandon their position. And then we arrive at the passage that changes the tone of the story, Genesis 6:1-4. Scripture says that when men began to multiply on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that they were beautiful and took as wives all they chose. Here, Many debate interpretations, but within the narrative path you've chosen, and which is widely used in ancient tradition, these sons of God are understood as angels who broke a boundary. They crossed a frontier. The celestial invaded the earthly in a forbidden way, and this did not go without consequence. Other texts in the New Testament echo this idea. Jude mentions angels who did not keep their original state, and Peter speaks of angels who sinned and were cast into prisons of darkness. The feeling is clear. Something serious happened in the spiritual world, and the effect of that reached human history. And when the boundary is violated, deformation is born. From these unions came beings described as mighty, heroes of old, men of renown. The name that crossed generations was Nephilim, a word that carries the sound of fall, and at the same time, the weight of physical grandeur. And now, my friend, the stage was set. On one side, humanity growing in number and ability. On the other, hidden forces approaching to corrupt what still held traces of Eden. And when the Nephilim arrived, nothing remained the same. Do not think of the Nephilim as just big men. They were more than size. They were influence. They were not just muscles, they were leadership, presence, intelligence, strategy, and a capacity to impose dominion that made ordinary people feel small inside, even before they felt small on the outside. Villages began to tell stories. Valleys repeated legends. Children learned their names before even learning who the Creator was. They spoke of warriors capable of tearing down walls, of hunters who faced beasts without weapons, of builders who raised enormous stones to exalt their own glory. And the human heart did what it often does. It traded reverence for blind admiration. The fascination spread like fire. Some saw the Nephilim as protectors, others as demigods, and where they settled, violence grew. Because there's a dangerous sequence here. First comes the charm, then comes dependence, and then comes servitude. Tools that once cultivated the earth became weapons. Music that could have elevated the soul became the soundtrack of empty celebrations. Cities that were meant to house families became showcases of power. And the more the people applauded, the more the Nephilim demanded tributes, honor, altars, monuments. Pride doesn't know how to say enough. And that's how the world began to become a place where strength was worth more than justice. As the years passed, the Nephilim stopped being just legendary figures and became lords. Lords over lands, over rivers, over cities. Each village had its story of oppression. Crops taken before ripening, families subjugated, young people trained to serve the strong, and common folk living in fear. Colossal monuments arose to celebrate their names. Stones were erected along the valleys, with scribes recording feats of war and hunting. Squares filled with images that mimicked their traits, and sacrifices were offered not to the Creator, but to the cult of power. Violence ceased to be an exception and became the path to prestige. Parties mixed with dark rituals. Purity and justice came to be called weakness. Women were treated as prizes, the elderly discarded, children educated to admire brutality. And now observe, it wasn't just a bad group. It was a system, a whole culture molded by arrogance. Scripture describes the result with harsh words, that the wickedness of man was multiplying on the earth, and that the imagination of the thoughts of his heart was continually evil, and that the earth was corrupt and filled with violence. And here we understand something frightening. When the human heart kneels before power, it starts to think that what once was unthinkable is now normal. The world prospered outwardly, cities, techniques, tools, but was rotting inwardly. And while the Nephilim were applauded, the heavens saw the seeds of destruction spreading, but not everyone bowed. There is always a minority that remains, even trembling. Amidst so many names engraved in stone, a simple name began to stand out, not for strength, but for difference. Noah. Noah didn't have the stature of a giant. He had no armies, he had no monuments, but he had something that no power can take by force: integrity. While most followed the flow of corruption, Noah walked another way. He preserved reverence. He kept his heart inclined to the Creator, and when God looked at the earth and saw violence as a moral flood, he found in Noah a space for a new beginning. Here the script changes again, because the story of the Nephilim is not just about giants, it's about a limit. And when the limit is broken, the hour of judgment arrives. The Most High decided to purify the earth. But attention, the judgment didn't come as an impulse. It came as a decision, and along with the decision came an instruction. The Creator spoke to Noah and revealed the plan. A flood would cover the world, but there would be a way out for those who trusted his word. It was time to build an ark of strong wood, with internal divisions, with sealed walls, big enough to house people, provisions, and animals. Noah received instructions that seemed impossible, and did what few can do when the whole world calls it madness. He obeyed. Imagine the scene. Noah choosing trees, cutting trunks, working the wood, marking beams. His sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, helping with dedication, learning measurements, joints, tools. The ark grew slowly, taking up space as a testimony. Each blow of the axe was a silent declaration. I trust in something greater than the opinion of the crowd. And the crowd noticed. Men approached, laughing. Are you going to sail on dry ground? Women mocked. He's lost his mind. Young people imitated the sounds of the hammer and turned it into a joke. And then, even the Nephilim came to see. Some looked with contempt, others with irritation, because pride cannot stand to see someone living by a superior voice. At one point, someone may have thought, let's destroy this. But Noah's and his sons' resolve became a kind of resistance, not with sword, but with perseverance. Years passed. The ark was ready. 3 floors, a roof where light entered, a wide side door, compartments for food, seeds, tools, space to house life. It was not just a boat, it was a sign, a symbol of preservation in the midst of judgment. And then came the moment that turned everything into pure cinematic action. God ordered Noah to gather representatives of every creature, pairs of each species, and for the clean animals, more than pairs. And the animals began to arrive. From the mountains, goats and deer. From the valleys, wolves and foxes. Birds crossing the sky in rows. And even small creatures that no one values, moving as if obeying an invisible order. The people watched in awe, but still hardened their hearts, because humans can see a sign and still choose to ignore it. Noah entered with his family, and then the door was closed, and it wasn't by human hands. It was by the Lord himself, and outside a strange silence fell, that kind of silence that seems to hold the world's breath. At first, there were dark clouds. Some said, it's just a storm. But soon, the rain intensified and didn't stop. The water began to run along the paths, soaking the soil. Streams turned into rivers. Underground springs burst. The level rose quickly. Houses were invaded. Barns swept away. Cries echoed through the valleys. People ran to higher places, taking what they could. But what do you take when the whole world is collapsing? The Nephilim tried to resist. Some raised trunks to float, trusting their own strength. Others climbed rocks, thinking that height was salvation. Some tried to organize groups, impose command, maintain control even in the chaos. But there was an enemy that doesn't respect reputation: the water. The currents tore down what seemed unshakable. Yesterday's glory turned into despair. Their songs, their feats, their statues, their altars, their promises of eternity, all buried with the violence they spread. And inside the ark, the environment was different. Animals settled, provisions stored. A family in silence, sustained by one certainty: the Creator is faithful. Each thunder reminded them that the promise was being fulfilled, the waters judged, but also preserved. Because, as hard as the judgment was, there was a future being kept there. And then, one day, the rain stopped. The waters still covered much, but the world began to breathe again, slowly, like someone waking up after a long fever. The ark rested, and outside there was a new silence. The silence of a planet washed, but also a planet empty. The era of the Nephilim was over. The giants, their songs of power, their monuments had been erased. What remained? Memory, a warning written not in stone, but in the very fabric of history. No power can stand when it despises the Creator. And Noah, upon leaving, did not leave as a proud winner. He left as a survivor with a mission. He left as the seed of humanity for a new beginning. The narrative doesn't end in destruction. It ends in preservation. It ends by saying, in no uncertain terms, that there is still a path when there is obedience. Over the centuries, the memory of giants has crossed cultures. Some people spoke of titans, others of demigod heroes, others of impossible builders, warriors of enormous size. And the human being, as curious as they are, looks at ancient ruins, huge stones, colossal structures, and asks, how did they do this? There are theories, there are hypotheses, there are debates, but the central message of this story is not how they built it, it's why they fell. The Nephilim represent the result of a boundary violated and the transformation of power into an idol. They symbolize the danger of a humanity that accepts violence as normal and calls arrogance greatness. And Noah represents the opposite: simple faith, persistent obedience, the courage to seem strange in a corrupted world. In the end, this narrative points to a principle that transcends generations. When the human heart tries to live without reference to the Creator, it repeats the old insubmission and draws closer to the same type of ruin. But the grace that preserved Noah continues to be the path of preservation for any generation that chooses to listen, watch, and remain. If this story made you think, leave a like to support the channel and help this content reach more people. Comment below, do you believe the story of the Nephilim echoes in ancient legends of other peoples? And share it with someone who enjoys biblical mysteries and epic narratives, because there's much more coming your way.